If there's any of the slides you would like to see, you can visit on our YouTube channel. We'll have it posted over the next few days. Great. So thank you again for joining us for our first summer series session called Retiring in Your 30s. We are Nevada Money Mentors, a program that is on campus at the University of Nevada, Reno, which helps promote financial wellness and financial well-being for our students. We will be walking through some concepts today that help you get on track to earlier retirement. And if early retirement isn't on the radar quite yet, or if it's a little bit too overwhelming to think about, we want you to at least feel motivated when you leave this call to have some new tips and best practices that you can put into place for your financial life to help you save more money. So with that, Devin, if you can go ahead and click me to the next slide. A little bit more about us. You will see us on campus, so hopefully when we're all back in the next month or so, to talk to you about all types of money-related questions, concerns, and goals that you might have. To do this, we pop up a bunch of tabling events around campus. We'll host workshops and visit classes to make presentations. And one of our most popular topics that we and services that we offer is called financial coaching. So through our financial coaching service, you can schedule an appointment with a peer mentor, and we sit down with you and go through all of these money questions that you might have. We'll outline the goals of things you want to get better at in terms of how you're managing your money today. Some of the most popular topics that we discuss with students include budgeting, savings, saving for studying abroad, building up credit, and paying down debts. And those debts that we talk to you about include credit card debts, student loan repayments, car loans, and all of that good stuff. So when you are ready, we would love it if you visit our website. We're at unr.edu, Nevada Money Mentors, and you can schedule an appointment directly from the site to meet with us. Our appointments, they last about an hour a piece, and we meet with students about 3 to 4 times in a semester. So it's a little bit of a commitment on your part, but the reason why it's a commitment is because there's an accountability piece to it, and it actually, the process works. So when you're ready, we hope that you'll schedule with us. Awesome. So what is the FIRE movement? And before I move on to this, I do want to remind you that as we talk about some of these financial concepts today, and we also discuss terms around savings and terms around investing, I want to remind you that we have peer mentors who work in our office, so they are students, and we are not licensed or certified to be giving you any specific financial advice. So all of the tips and tools that we go over today are just for educational purposes, and when you're ready to really truly start investing and look at specific products, we recommend that you work with a certified financial planner or at least a licensed financial advisor. So with that, the FIRE movement. I don't know if any of you have heard about it. If you want to add into the chat box, if you're familiar with what is FIRE, but it has become quite a movement because what it is the focus around is retiring early. So what it stands for is financial independence, retire early. And to get to that point, when you're looking at how do you retire early, it is a lot about how you can save and invest extremely aggressively. So I saw an article recently that said the FIRE movement is like a gazelle, and you know how fast and sleek a gazelle can run across a field, right? We've all kind of seen pictures of that. Well, when we watch the gazelle, this gazelle is on fire, okay? So it's like triple the amount of speed, because when you're investing and saving money in the FIRE process, you're saving about 50 to 75% of your income. So to do that is, you know, a lot of cutbacks in your spending, and a huge amount is going towards your savings goals. But what this allows you to do is decide when you can retire, or even if you're not wanting to retire in full, let's say you finish your college career, you start out with a great job, you're able to put 50 to 75% away in your income, which can happen and does happen. So people live this lifestyle, but maybe they just decide to work less, or maybe they work part-time, or maybe it allows them to live off of that passive income and work doing something they love. So they make a career out of a hobby, such as photography or blogging and things like that. So it gives you the freedom and independence to decide when and how much you want to work going forward. So Devin, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'd like you to take a minute here and rate yourself on how you are in spending. So the biggest thing about being frugal, because when we're cutting back and saying you have to, for fire movement, save as much as possible, and when we're looking at numbers as high as 50 to 75% of your income, we want you to say, you know, how frugal are you? So I'm going to pull the chat box back up here, and I'd be curious to see on this scale here, where do you rate yourself? What kind of spender are you? Are you very frugal down in the blue side? You don't like to spend anything? Are you more of a moderate spender, aggressive, or you find that you're spending a lot all the time, so you're more on that other range? And I have to give some kudos for this slide. We had a money mentor in the past. His name is Gage, and he worked with us for about a year, and he is pretty much on track to following this fire movement. He is a student that will graduate, I believe, next year in finance, and he helped us create this whole presentation and specifically this slide because he thought it was important for us to take a moment and self-reflect and see, you know, how can you, what kind of spender are you, and how realistic is the fire movement going to be for you? So let me look through here and just see what some folks said. It looks like we're right around the middle. We've got a couple down on the lower end. Dylan, you're more on the frugal side. You might be our most frugal one of the group today. Oh, nope, Sunil's got you beat. Yeah, we have to eat though, right? That's important. So insurance and okay, so yeah, sometimes we've just got obligations. We have to make and meet these certain expenses every month. So we have to be frugal in other areas. And then Elizabeth has a question about discretionary income or required spending. So it says, like, if you have to spend an X amount of money, that is the majority. Is that not being frugal if you don't have a choice? Yeah, so you touch on something really good here. This is for more of your overall spending. So how can you cut back even on the fixed and flexible expenses that we have every month? When we're looking at the fire movement and how frugal can we be, most folks, and not always, remember this is always case-to-case scenario and you can customize this in a way that works for you. But what we're looking at here is that how can you cut back on rent? We've got some folks who follow the fire movement and they live with roommates and they're 35, 40 years old, right? That doesn't work for everybody, but it can help you cut back on some of those things that you do have to pay for. So it can feel like there's items that we have to have, food, shelter, clothing, right? But are there some ways that we can come back? Sometimes not. And the only other way, if you cannot make cutbacks, would be to increase income. And we'll talk to you a little bit about ways to be creative around increasing income as well. So thank you. Thanks for participating in that. Appreciate it. Devin, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so another checkpoint here. So we'll use the chat box for this as well, but want to see where you're at today. And if I were to ask you kind of why are you all in college right now? Most of, I guess I would assume that we're here so because you want to get, one, a better education. So two, you can have a better job and a better paying job once you graduate. But we know that going to college is not always fun. You're staying up late, studying, the academic load, the balancing between working and going to school can be quite heavy on us and overwhelming at times. And finance, just so you know, can be the exact same way. If you want these good results, you have to put in that work. So I would be curious here to just kind of see what are some of the things and the events in your life that have helped shape your opinion on money. So I'll give you an example. From when Gage did this presentation a couple years ago, he grew up in the housing crisis around 2008. And that impacted his outlook on real estate, his outlook on how his parents managed money, and therefore impacted the way that he saved money. I know for me personally, my parents, I had a father who was a special education teacher, and a mom who stayed at home with us kids. And I remember as a child going with her to houses that she would clean for extra money so my family could buy groceries. And so those are things that shaped me, because when we got to go out to eat dinner, whether it was McDonald's or some other kind of sit down local place, it was just a treat. And so I still treat myself to that treat today, in saying that going out to eat is something that we rarely do, because I treat it as something sort of as a bonus for ourselves for working hard. So that's not the case for everybody. So I'd be curious if you could just put in the chat box, what are some things that maybe shaped your opinion on money? And you could sum it up. You could tell us a quick story. Awesome. Stories would be great. Anything quick. Okay, so Nicholas said he had parents that never went to school and had lower paying jobs, but dad saved so that now you have the opportunity, Nicholas, to be in school. So you want it says, I want the luxury of never having to worry about my stability. And isn't that the truth? And when we look at the term financial well-being, it's kind of that, what you're saying there, that stability of being able to absorb any financial shocks that might come along, such as COVID, right? That's a big one that we're all experiencing right now, but also having the freedom and to make choices that you want with your money. So having stability and also some freedom of choice. So thank you, Nicholas, for sharing. And that's a pretty remarkable story to show the work your parents put in to have you be the legacy that gets to start going to school and kind of have that stability going forward. So Dylan says his parents, 4 kids, were able to accelerate their retirement and retire early at 50. Wow, that is incredible. So now they've adopted their lifestyle to live comfortably after all their savings. It would be nice to have that too, right? So Dylan, that's an amazing story. They did it. They retired early. 50 is still a very early age to retire, and they sound like they continue to live comfortably off their savings. So it's these moments that we can take and reflect and say, gosh, where do my thoughts about money come from, and how does that impact my motivation or my trust in myself that you could retire early? So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Devin, and Devin is a money mentor in our office. He's also a finance major, very passionate about learning about savings, will be a financial advisor. I am confident in that someday, and he's going to jump into more of the meat of the presentation here. So thanks, Devin.
No, thank you for the introduction. So how to become financially independent. We kind of discussed, I heard discussions about this prior to jumping on the line, but let's just take a look for ourselves. So it's not necessarily retiring, right? It's getting the option to do so. So giving yourself the option to work or to not work, and really giving yourself the lifestyle that you want. I know a lot of people mentioned this in the chat about being free of any stress, and that was a big stressor for their parents, and that's a big concern for a lot of people. In 2019, CNBC reported that money was the #1 stressor of all issues in America. So obviously this is a very coveted thing, financial independence. So let's just take a look on how to get there, right? And 2 things are a must: high net worth and frugality. So for those that don't know, net worth is calculated by taking your assets minus your liabilities. And then you add those up, and then hopefully you get, a net high result, because you can't have a bunch of liabilities and low assets to retire early. It's just not feasible. And another thing is frugality. This is going to take some of the work, like we were mentioning about before. You need to track your spending. You need to not spend as much, because it involves a lot of aggressive spending, right? And lastly, we can look at the Trinity rule, or the Trinity research study. And this is kind of a debated subject. It kind of changes a lot based on certain factors that you put into it, but a good simplistic rule is 4% is the 4% rule and the 25 rule. Let me just enter this person. So 4% is meaning 4% of your savings withdrawn each year. And then the 25 rule is basically a yearly rule. So let's look at math time if this pops up for me. There we go. So math time. Like I said, it wasn't going to be fun, a little bit of this, but it's really simplistic when you break it down. So let's say your current spending is 25K annually and your current earnings is 100K annually. So that's a pretty good income to spending ratio. So if you do 25,000 times 25 in years, right? That'd be 625K needed to retire for 25 years. And if you divide that 625K by the 75K that you're saving, that'll only take 8 years and 4 months to accomplish, right? So think of it, in 8 years and 4 months, if you were to make this amount of income, obviously it's case by case, but you'd have 25 years of just being able to choose what you want to do. And I know we don't see any 4% right here, right, in the math time selection, but if you were to take 625K and multiply that by 4%, you'll get that 25K annually that you'd be spending each year. Okay. So if that sounds good, if there's any questions on that, we can answer in the chat box. But again, I would really look into the Trinity studies for your own research. But it's just depending on the amount of years you want to take by, like 33 years. If you want to take out 5% of that, but 4% should be a comfortable amount to take out each year. Now, obviously, the end of that, the little math selection, that was a little shaky, but it really is breaking down the secret to wealth is 3 steps: making more money, spending less money, and investing the difference. And like they say, it's easier said than done. It definitely applies to this situation. There's a lot more steps than just make more money, spend less, and invest the difference. We would all be millionaires if this were the case. So let's break these down one by one and try to figure out the real meat of the situation. So making more money. Everyone wants to make more money, right? But there's a couple avenues that you could go down to do this. And 2 of the most common are either strengthening one form of income or getting multiple streams of income. All right. So let's talk about strengthening one stream of income. That's kind of what you're doing right now, right? For those who are in college, you're going to college to hopefully get a degree so you could hire your income. And that could also be done outside of college, right? You could, read books, invest in classes. All of these will make you a more valuable worker and hopefully, increase your income, which usually comes with being a more valuable worker. Secondly, this is kind of off to multiple streams of income. This can involve things like side hustles or different business ventures. So things like selling shoes online or doing Postmates or, a lot of these driving or Ubering jobs, these are including different streams of incomes. So you have your normal job, you sell shoes, they all combine to make a greater income. And then finally, invest in passive income. So this is also part of that multiple streams of income portion, but it's a little more technical, right? And I'm not sure if some of you have heard of what passive income is, but it's basically creating more money by putting little or no effort into it. So some examples of passive income can be having a rental property where you get that rent coming each month. If you just put more and more into that, you could build more of a asset base that you could get more renters to come for you. And then doing something like dividend investing. So dividend is a portion of the stock that you have. It gets paid to you at certain quarters that are decided by the corporation. That's a great way of making an income stream come from just investing like you would any other investment. And then another example is a YouTube channel, right? Now this is kind of a hybrid, right? Because you get money off the top and, this comes with being a famous YouTuber or just having some views. You could do very certain things like reviewing something off Amazon, but those AdSense come in when somebody watches the video. So let's say you post a video right now, 2 months down the line, more people will be watching it. You'll just getting more and more AdSense from that video. And obviously, again, these are easier said than done, but if you put in the work, that'll help. And I know you guys are probably figuring out what these logs and branches are meant for, but I can just give you a quick explanation. Think of it like one strong branch and then a bunch of branches, right? So strengthening one stream of income will make a very thick branch that's hard to break, right? Um, and then just like that, you have a bunch of branches, multiple streams of income. If you tie those together, they both become very hard to break, right? I thought it was a pretty cute analogy. Uh, But yeah, that's kind of what I like to do is put little examples in there. It's easier to digest. But I hope that makes sense. Now, uh, again, we talked about this before in the little discussion about what do you do when you have all these accountabilities that you have to put your money towards, and that's true. Spending less is really a case by case basis. You know, some people have to pay for their kids and their kids' school and car insurance and blah blah blah, and that changes throughout the years, right? But there's some things that you could be doing regardless of the obligations that you have or what liabilities you do have. And that's something like tracking your income and expenses. I really see tracking your income and expenses as probably the most important part of spending less. You need to know where your money's coming and going to be able to know where your time needs to go. If you have multiple streams of income, what's making you the most income? That's what you should be focusing more of your time on. And where are you spending your money? Where can you cut back? Where can you put that money instead? So that's one thing that's an absolute essential. And then another thing, which is much harder to do, is avoid lifestyle inflation, right? Has anyone ever heard of lifestyle inflation? If you do, drop it in the chat. But it's something that's really difficult, and it's almost human nature to want to inflate your lifestyle. But it's easier right now for those who are in college to just live like a broke college student for a long time. You know, you're already eating ramen, you're already living in small apartments. But once you get that raise, you kind of want to go splurge, get a new apartment, blah, blah, blah. You gotta have to restrain yourself if you want to put a lot into savings. That aggressive savings is kind of dependent on your lifestyle inflation. Now, finally, categorizing your needs and wants. Okay, this will come from tracking your expenses, but really finding out what your needs and wants are. That's where people find the most issues, is blurring the line between what you really need, what's essential and what's non-essential. And think of it like you're on an island, right? What are you going to bring on an island? And feel free to put that in the chat box. That will tell you kind of an explanation of what it is. Any example? Yeah, water, right, Amy? That water is definitely a need, right? Things like shelter, things like clothes, those are the things that you're going to want to bring, right? But yeah, food, exactly. Those are your essentials. Those are things you need. But things like, um, I don't know, 20 pairs of shoes, that's not needed on an island. A Lambo is not needed on an island. Uh, things like, I don't know, popcorn. I guess I just have a beef with popcorn. It's not an essential food. It doesn't give you any substance. You want things that are essential, right? And then finally, for our last three slides is investing the difference, okay? So we already worked on making more money. We already worked on spending less money, but what do you do with the things in between, okay? And investing is kind of a daunting thing, but it's really simple when you break it down, right? And it's overcomplicated by people in the media and blah blah blah. Right. If you ever get those ads where someone's trying to sell you a course or whatever that says that they could beat the market, they can't do it. No one ever tries to sell you buy and hold. They're always like, "Hey, I can make you a quick buck." It's just not true, and it's been proven time and time again. So the three things that you really need to do in investing is invest consistently. So this is dollar cost investing. It's basically defying whatever happens in the marketplace. You spend the same amount of money each month into your investments, okay? Because an intelligent investor doesn't put their money based on what the stock market is, because they can't really predict what it will be and what it could grow to. So always invest consistently and buy and hold. Don't get shaky like, COVID dropped the stock market. I'm sure all of you guys heard the crazy, uh, all of you guys heard the crazy rumors on what's going to happen with the stock market. Uh, but to be honest, no one really knows where it's going to go. And that goes right along with don't try to beat the market. So looking at this graph, right? What does it show you? What can you tell from this graph? Yeah, great. So stocks always go up, it goes up, consistent growth, and some hiccups. Exactly. So you guys landed it right on the money. So this is the S&P 500 throughout the years. And if those who don't know, the S&P 500 is an index fund that tracks the 500 biggest companies, or it's not technically even 500, but the 500 biggest companies, right? You could see there are little hiccups. Those are the recessions, right? So you see 1930, a big drop. There's one 1970, 1980s, the dot-com bubble, and then you see 2008 right there. But that doesn't change what ultimately happens. All those people that dropped their money in 2008, like the panic, if they would have just kept it, they would have seen much higher growth, right? They cashed in their money when it wasn't necessary. And that's the mindset that a lot of investors go through, is they see a scare and then they drop. That's not the time to drop. That's the time to hold. Um, and if you're wondering where should I invest that money, a good thing like a low cost, low fee index fund is a great place to do that. Okay, and that's even shown by a person that some of you might have known, Warren Buffett. Have you ever heard of Warren Buffett? He's kind of a finance guru, at least in the investing world. But we're going to talk about a little case study. So, for those who didn't know what he looked like, that's Warren Buffett. Uh, and he had a very interesting bet with a hedge fund. And for those who don't know what a hedge fund is, it's basically a group of, expert investors who come together and try to beat the market. They try to get a higher return. But let's see what the bet was. In 2007 to 2017, Warren Buffett and this hedge fund bet $1 million on who would get the higher return. Okay. And so this hedge fund did what hedge funds do. They manipulate the market. They try to beat it, right? And all Warren Buffett did was place his money into an index fund, just like we were saying, the S&P 500 index fund. And who do you think got the higher return on their investment after the 10 years? Yeah, exactly. S&P 500. Warren Buffett. Buffett. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of S&P 500, a lot of Buffets, and you would be right on that assumption. Warren Buffett, if he didn't need it, made another $1 million. But his return at the end of that 2007 to 2017 time frame, he got 7.1% return on his investment. And can you even guess how much the hedge fund got on that return? If anyone does get it exactly right, I'll give them $10. But it's a very specific stat if you just know off the top of your head. 3.2, that's not a bad guess, actually. They got a 2.2 return. Oh, 14, that would be nice. Then they'd get a better return than Warren Buffett. But Warren Buffett actually beat them out. They got a 2.2 return on their hedge fund. So they tried to beat the market. They tried to time it and felt like they knew what they were doing. But just putting your money into a simple index fund could go a long way. And it's very simple, and you don't need to know how to beat the market to get a good return. Okay. But before you start doing all of that, right? Before you make these investment moves. I know it's probably exciting to get a 7% return on your investment. Um, but let's think about the foundation. No good kingdom is built without a good foundation. So some of the things that you need to do is budget, right? Track your expenses and budget. Make financial goals to hit. That's probably the most important. That's the bread and butter. And then two, 3 to 6 months worth of emergency funds. This is very, very, very important. Before you do anything else, you need to lock that down. 3 to 6 months, maybe 3 to 8 months worth of emergency funds. Think about the coronavirus. Think about what it did to a lot of people. A lot of people that got out of their jobs and were waiting for unemployment to hit them, but they didn't have that money to keep them afloat between that time that the unemployment offices gave them their funds. No one wants to go through that stress. That's why it's very important to figure out how much of living expenses you use each month, and then save up 3 to 8 months really of that payment, just in case anything like this happens again. And also paying down high debts or bad debts is extremely important. Anything over like a 5% interest rate will really start hurting you in the long run. So you need to pay those off immediately. If you have a good credit score and you get a really good interest rate, I mean, all the interest rates are down right now. So if you get something like 2%, that's a pretty good debt that maybe uh, you could wait and pay the minimum on that, right? Everyone takes that in different ways. Some people are no debts. Some people leverage their debts. The difference between that is really some people like David Ramsey or Dave Ramsey. He says no debts at all, right? Some people like to leverage that money and put their money somewhere else that maybe could grow more. It's really a mental thing, and it might just be nicer to just have no debts at all. And then fourthly, invest and learn, right? You want to learn yourself, know exactly what you want. Don't take anyone's real word for it. I implore you to look into things on your own to know that you're getting the right substance. Okay. So thank you very much. And I'll send it over to Amy so she could do the debrief.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Devin. That was super helpful. Lots of new terminology there too, right? So I know there's great websites out there and podcasts you can listen to. If anyone has a website that you use to look up different financial concepts, terms, calculations, visuals, or if you have any podcasts you like to listen to around the FIRE movement or other financial wellness, we would love for you to add that into the chat box for us. But with that, I think what we'll do here is we'll stop the recording. If you would like to reach out to us for an appointment, you want to schedule some time to sit down and see how are you saving and how are you doing, please reach out to us.